Okay, now I think we are ready. As I prepare to ring the Tibetan bowl, let's just settle into a comfortable position. Let's relax. I have just a few words from Isaiah. They were used by Randall Thompson in his masterpiece, The Peaceable Kingdom. And Judy and I had the opportunity to sing that piece while we were in Annapolis. The message is especially relevant to today's topic of joy as a birthright. For you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and the trees of the field shall clap their hands. That was wonderful, Michael. Thank you. I'd like to know how many were humming along. There's the start of our choir. Oh, no, that's right, an expansion. I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you, Michael, and let me thank Vita for these beautiful flowers today. Thank you, Vita. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River. A special welcome to our friends, members, and visitors, both here in the sanctuary and those joining us on Zoom. Our mission, as noted on the cover of your order of service, is to inspire, inform, and support all who seek spiritual and personal growth and a more equal and just community. I'm Jan Sprinkle, worship leader today, joining Reverend Catherine Adams for a discussion of joy as our birthright and how we can use that to fit today's current situation. Now for announcements. I have only one, and that's just a heads up that the grounds cleanup is scheduled for April 12th. I believe Diane Shields is doing all of the coordination and planning necessary for that, but many hands make light work. And there being no other announcements, let's move right on into the chalice lighting. I have some different unison words printed in your order of service. Let there be joy in our coming together this morning. Let there be truth heard in the words we speak. Let there be help and healing for our disharmony and despair. Let there be silence for the voice within us and among us. Let there be joy in our coming together. Our first hymn this morning will will be 298. Wake now, my senses. I'm guessing that most of us will know that one when we hear a little bit of it. Please stand as you are willing and able, and we'll give it our best Unitarian shot.
Y'all sound awesome. Today is the day of the beginning of our monthly theme of joy, and there are going to be two through lines that I offer and I'm inviting us to explore today. One, joy is our birthright. Has anyone ever seen those little signs that say, "Don't steal my joy, don't let them steal your joy"? Right? It's your birthright. And we'll talk about that throughout the rest of our time together. And another one that's really important, and I think it's in a way, it's an insidious way that joy gets stolen, is what we pay attention to grows, right? The intentional direction of our attention is something that I believe is truly important, and we'll be talking about throughout our day today. So I'm going to use our opening words with a poem from Reverend Dr. Barbara A. Holmes, who was a Black womanist public theologian grounded in contemplation. The header on our webpage said, "Living authentically with and for community, with great joy and even greater risk." Dr. B, as she was called on our regular podcast, died earlier this year, and she was author of the book, Joy Unspeakable. And she left behind this beautiful poem that I'm going to share with us today, describing some of that great joy emerging from the hardest of times. Joy unspeakable is not silent. It moans and hums and bends to the rhythms of a dancing universe. It is a fractal, transcendent hope, a hologram of God's heart, a black hole of unknowing. For free African ancestors, joy unspeakable is drum talk that invites the spirits to dance with us and tell tall tales by the fire. For the desert mothers and fathers, joy unspeakable is a respite from maddening crowds and a freedom from church as usual. For enslaved Africans during the Middle Passage, joy unspeakable is the surprise of living one more day and the freedom to hold in your heart. For Africans in bondage and America's, joy unspeakable is the moment of mystical encounter when God tiptoes into the hush harbor and testifies about a divine suffering and whispers into our ears, "Don't forget, I taught you how to fly on a wing and a prayer. When you're ready, let's go." Joy unspeakable is a humming of how I got over after swimming safely to the other shore of the swollen Ohio River, and when you know that you can't swim. It's the blessed assurance that Canada is far, but not that far. For African members of the invisible institution, the emerging Black church, joy unspeakable is practicing freedom while chains still chafe. Singing deliverance while Jim Crow stalks. Trusting God's healing in home remedies and prayers and kerosene and cow patty tea. For tap dancing, boogie woogie, rap, rock, blues, grots, who also hear God, joy unspeakable is the space, time, joy, continuum thing that dares us to play and pray in the interstices of life. It is the belief that the phrase, the art of living, means exactly what it says. Joy unspeakable is both fire and cloud and an unlikely merger of trance and high-tech lives. Ecstatic songs and jazz repertoires, joy unspeakable is a symphony of incongruities, of faces aglow and hearts on fire, and the wonder of surviving together. Beloveds, may we thrive in joy unspeakable.
Let me light one more candle for all those joys and concerns that remain in your hearts unspoken, and we will observe some silence. So be it.
Before I segue to the little more serious meditative side, I got to tell you that a service is about joy a little more often, because that was the most laughing I've heard during joys and sorrows the whole time I've been with you. Let's do that. So I invite you to take a deep breath. Find a generally upright and relaxed position, turning your attention inward with an excerpt from the Book of Joy. No dark fate, I'm going to do a little editing as I go, even muskrats, determines our future. We do. Each day and each moment, we are able to create and recreate our lives and the quality of human life on our planet. This is the power we wield. Lasting happiness cannot be found in the pursuit of any goal or achievement. It does not reside in fortune or fame. It resides only in the human mind or heart. And that is where we hope you will find it. Maintaining the spirit of meditation that we've joined, please join me in a Lojong practice for humility. I'm going to invite you to reflect on all the people and beings responsible for your life. Think of your parents, given, biological, or chosen. Think of your teachers, formal or informal, or mentors. The people who grow your food and who made your clothes, and countless others who are responsible for you having the life that you have each and every day. Think of those who discovered and created the things that we take for granted. The housing, the crops, the medicines. Think of all the ancestors who had to live and survive so that you could even be born, who braved enormous hardships so you could have the life that you do. We are our ancestors' dreams. Think of the family. Again, whenever I say family is always given or chosen, friends and communities who give your life purpose. Invite your attention to shift from your mind, our beautiful, wonderful mind, and thinking down that 18 to 24 inches into our heart space and feeling. Allow your heart to open and experience the joy and appreciation that comes from being in touch with all that has been given to you, and realizing how interdependent we are with others, how weak we can be in separateness, and yet, as I heard a whole lot of in our joys and sorrows, how strong in our togetherness. Let us bask in togetherness in this sanctuary. And when you are ready, welcome your attention back to our time together. And open your eyes if they're closed so that I'll know you're ready. In basking in togetherness, I invite us to rise in body or spirit and join our voices in hymn 205, Amazing Grace.
I will now pass the baskets for the collection of the offertory and your contributions to the good works of this church, both here and in the community.
us a bit of a roundup by Jean-Joseph Louret.
I am really grateful you said that and didn't give that to me to read. I'm very confident I would butcher it. Several months ago, I subscribed to a major online newspaper and chose several feeds that would make it easier for me to keep up with what was important to me. That lasted for 2 weeks. The ping grabbed my attention from what I wanted to focus on, and the news was always euphoric or rage-inducing. And I just spent 7 years working my way away from binary thinking and realizing the richness and ministry that happens when we realize the complexity of our world. And I found binaries coming up left, right, and center, and it was pulling me in, pulling on my emotions and amplifying them into bigger waves. Nothing was just good, it was awesome. Nothing was bad, it was disastrous. And I got exhausted. Rapidly, I chose to stop and unsubscribe from it all. I prioritized walks, time in nature, playing soccer with my youngest, and when I was ready, I found a news source or two that met my needs, that to keep me informed, maybe with some integration, and most importantly, I decide when and if to engage with the material. That experience raised 2 questions for me that I want to share today. First, how do we live with joy through the poly crisis? And second, how do we gain or regain control of our attention and remain informed? My first question led me to an exploration grounded in the wisdom of spiritual leaders who led with joy through really significant adversity. Both were nonviolent leaders who won the Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts to free their people and their lands. His Holiness the Dalai Lama learned to live in joy, deep compassion, and recognize that everyone wants to avoid suffering and live their best lives. He's an exiled world religious leader after the Chinese government took over his homeland in Tibet. Yet when you hear him talk about that, he doesn't talk about the exile. He doesn't focus on what was taken from him. He focuses on the warm greeting and welcoming of the people of India, of the communities that support his exiled people. And there's part of that too, right? Nothing's real. Very few things are truly one-sided. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, blended religious and secular leadership to deconstruct apartheid in South Africa through a peaceful, nonviolent movement. And he was living with the cancer that would go on to kill him in a few years when writing this book. Together, they co-created the Book of Joy, where they stared into the abyss of despair of our times and discussed how to live a life brimming with joy. And it was their express intent with their co-author, Douglas Abrams, to share the wisdom of lasting happiness with a changing world. And people got to contribute to the questions for the discussion. And the most asked question in July of 2015 was, how can we live with joy in a world with so much suffering? And that really landed with me in this time of polycrisis and attention capitalism. Deep joy is a spiritual act. The wisdom traditions of the world teach joy is an open-hearted engagement of the world. They don't teach us to live in open-hearted engagement and compassion only in good times or when it's easy. In fact, I think we need to live in deep joy more and more. That's more important during a polycrisis with our environmental, geopolitical, economic, societal, and technological systems all in flux. The term polycrisis comes from a French theorist of complexity. Again, not the binary, right? A philosopher and sociologist, Edgar Morin. And I feel it describes the complexity that we're facing with the numerous wicked problems which have incomplete, contradictory, and changing requirements that are often difficult to recognize. So I'm naming that because if anyone tells you they have the solution, that, for me, that's an immediate skepticism trigger, right? We're dealing with complex stuff. In the past, I've shared the phrase, "Joy is our birthright," inspired or attributed to Julian of Norwich as a paraphrase before, and I do believe that's true. Archbishop Desmond Tutu offered that joy is a way of approaching the world. And the text goes on to describe the 8 pillars of joy. Perspective. And as I go through these, I'm going to invite you to think of where perspective may have brought you joy, right? Being able to see something from many angles, realizing I may be exploring an elephant and I see the trunk, right? It doesn't mean that truth isn't there. The elephant's there, and it's usually bigger than we can see from our vantage point or perceive. Humility. We are all people, and we are all interdependent. I really wanted to use that in our meditation because sometimes humility gets a bad rap, right? Sometimes it's used to oppress people, like, what are you doing that? You can't do that. You have to be humble, right? That's not humility. That's a whole nother discussion, another sermon. Humor, which I love that we spontaneously already brought into our service space today, right? Laughing and joking. So many times as our emotions go high, we can either laugh or cry. And there's nothing wrong with crying. Crying is really powerful. It releases powerful hormones and it's great. And sometimes we have a choice to laugh because sometimes it's really just absurd, right? Acceptance. Acceptance is necessary for true change. And that isn't saying we don't make changes, but I can't change what is if I am still living in something that is anything other than what is. Does that make sense? Forgiveness, freeing ourselves from our past. Who has never made a mistake, right? And our self-talk sometimes brings those up, and sometimes we use that to come back, right? Forgive ourselves. Nobody here was born anything but human. Freeing ourselves from our past. Gratitude. Gratitude in every breath. Let's do that now. Gratitude for life. Every day we are here. That is a beautiful gift. Now, particularly in the Buddhist tradition of reincarnation, which includes reincarnation, being human, right? So all living beings could mean you can be the beautiful bunny rabbit that was out on our walkway, or a dung beetle, or other things, but not many can really impact our karma or the accumulation of where we are in the wheel as effectively as being human. So just being born human is something to be so grateful for because this is our time, right? This is the time for our spirit to work through our karma in those other pillars of joy. And I think that's a really beautiful way to look at it. It also, I found, was a really beautiful way to empower, tied with our acceptance when harm is happening. Because sometimes people get into we can't stop harm because we're accepting, right? But when harm is happening, not only do I have an obligation to intervene and stop harm for me, for those who are being impacted, and for the person who's doing it. The karma that they are incurring, whoa, that is not cool. The compassionate thing to do is to intervene. Does that make sense? And that I love because it invites me away from that us versus them polarity dynamic that we can get so trapped in. That doesn't heal us. That doesn't bring joy. And it doesn't solve our problems. Compassion. I've kind of, as you can see, these kind of flow together. Breaking them out into 8 pillars is tough. But connections with who we will suffer with. Where is our passion? What is calling us? right? There are so many communities in need of our compassion. And as I just mentioned, that includes the people that we don't agree with, right? Because compassion requires we intervene on harm. Generosity is an outgrowth of compassion that transcends most major religions. In Islam, there's zakat. In Judaism, there's tadi. I'm going to not say that well today. Thank you. In Hinduism, there's dana, right? We all have heard the calls for generosity. And what I really just want to highlight here is generosity, when it connects to joy, is so much more than money. It's time, it's spirit, it's relationship, it's giving of ourselves in connection. And that will invite us into a wise selfishness that I'll get to in a second. So I think that framing those 8 pillars can invite us into a beautiful spirituality and spiritual practice. So in a moment, I'm going to invite you to share a 1-word spiritual practice that is bringing you joy, 1 or 2 words for a spiritual practice that's bringing you joy. For me, walking in nature and letting my mind wander, pausing to witness all the beauty around me, including beautiful bunny rabbits on your walkway, and that can take my breath away, has been my spiritual practice that brings me joy. They remind me that the world is so much bigger than me and more than me. And I get to appreciate that raw life of nature. So now it's your turn. Are there any spiritual practices that you would like to share? Connie?
I spend a lot of time just watching the birds be so happy with my bird feeder outside.
The joy of birds with a bird feeder. Connie?
Just being outside and watching the spring bring back all the things that I love to mess around with and watch.
Being outside and witnessing the emergence of spring, bringing back all the things that Connie loves to help grow and mess around with.
Sitting by the river.
Sitting by the river. Stretching, so powerful, right? Things get stuck in our bodies sometimes. Listening to music.
Grounding and connecting to the energy of the earth and all around us.
Grounding and connecting to the energy of the earth and all around us.
Sitting with my cat and having her on my lap purring.
Sitting with a cat on our lap who is purring.
Fixing that which is broken.
Fixing that which is broken.
Swimming.
Swimming. Sailing.
Watching all the happy dogs at the farmer's market every Saturday.
That's an awesome one. Watching all the happy dogs at the farmer's market every Saturday, right? Those are some great spiritual practices that bring us joy, right? And they're ours to do. In this moment right now, I find myself doing the Buddhist practice of mudita, which is pleasure at others' good fortune. As every one of you named what brings you joy, I felt joy too. I haven't seen the dogs. My cat doesn't sit on laps. She loves my child. And all the other things and honestly, my family's from the Bronx. If I'm making something grow, it's probably not a good thing. And that doesn't mean I don't have joy at your joy or appreciate the beautiful works that come from them, right? And we can do that all the time. That is accessible to us. It's called sympathetic joy or joy at other people's joy. That's ours. Part of what I love about spiritual practice is that the freedom to choose what works for me and the power they have to change our lives. Honestly, I was on the productivity treadmill for years, daydreaming and letting my mind wander, can be a casualty of that intention age and the striving that gets so drummed into us sometimes. And for me, they nearly were. In formation, I had to make a concerted effort to learn to do nothing. How to just, I honestly looked at them like they had lost their ever-loving mind. The first time one of my mentors told me, don't just do something, be there. Don't just do something, be there. Being there is the most powerful thing we can do. How much time do we spend with activity that we don't need to do? We need to just be present, right? I get it now, but it's part of the journey. And honestly, learning to hold myself still and see what was there and live in this moment has changed my life. The presence in this moment is a precursor to joy because we connect with compassion and putting our attention on other people. Joy is different than happiness. It's less connected to external events. We don't have to wait for something to happen. Archbishop Desmond Tutu continued that our greatest joy is when we seek to do good for others. And for me, that means our greatest joy is when we recognize that everyone wants to live a life minimizing suffering and enjoy living our UU values of justice, interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, and generosity. And for anyone paying attention, yes, I did them in the order on your diagram. Applying joy as our birthright to the modern world will take attention. And in a modern economy has been described as an attention economy or attention capitalism. Our attention is sold. People become billionaires from directing our attention where they want it to go. And that's part of what I was experiencing with that online news, right? I find it helpful to remember that what I pay attention to, like good soil management, see, I can learn, grows. Regulating what we pay attention to is a spiritual practice, a political act, and is foundational to our relationships and more. And I believe it is foundational in our current world to claiming joy as our birthright. Side note, did you know that the word boredom doesn't exist in most indigenous cultures? In anything that came before modernity? Sitting still with your thoughts is. Being present is. Boredom is a product of modernity. Just gonna let that sit. So then we create this thing called boredom, where we do stuff that doesn't occupy our attention. And then what do we need? Something to occupy our attention, which comes to another thing and another thing. And then we get on the treadmill, right? Author Chris Hayes those thoughts come from the author Chris Hayes, editor-at-large of The Nation and host of the MSNBC show. He's also the author of The Siren's Call, How Attention Became the World's Most Endangered Resource. He describes the copious access to information in our world, and at least for me, I remember when that wasn't always true, right? My access to information was the Encyclopedia Britannica that my parents managed to get in our house, right? But today it is. I honestly earned a master's degree mostly on my cell phone. I occasionally typed a paper on my computer. But all my reading, connecting, posting, a lot of it I could do right there on my cell phone, standing in the grocery line. That copious access to information then invites us to figure out, okay, so what does information consume? It consumes the attention of the recipient. And so attention has become invaluable. So he offers there are 3 types of attention, that boredom is the root of all evil, and how our attention is commodified with algorithms and various internet platforms, and how to take it back. Now I'm gonna name right here, I may not be the biggest person on the internet, probably never have been, and I would really be surprised if that's in my future. And I'm not saying give up the internet. I am saying engage it with attention and intention about your attention, right? It's not bad, and there are things that are happening behind how it's being built in today's world, and that's not how it always was, that are designed to take your attention. And that is taking something from us, like our labor, but we're not compensated, and we're not supported, and we don't get a say in it unless we realize what's going on. So then having that opportunity to take it back. 3 types of attention are voluntary attention, which is what we usually think of, what we choose to pay attention to when we can suppress everything else that would distract us. Involuntary attention, like startling loud noises, a siren going by. And the one that we do most here, social attention, the need to have other people pay attention to us and to be and to confer our attention on other people. It's not a full relationship. It's one step above being ignored, but it is foundational for all relationships. You can't have a relationship without social attention. When our attention's in that sweet spot, not too much, not too little, we are not overwhelmed and we can find flow. And I use Professor James Siegel's definition of the mind as an emergent, self-organized, embodied relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information. And this invites that flow and attention to be into an open-hearted relational process of compassion and joy, creating joy as our birthright. And yet, there's suffering. The Dalai Lama offered that suffering is inevitable, but how we respond to it is our choice. Not even oppression or occupation can take away this freedom to choose our response. And I do recognize there are structural limitations that may constrain our choices. And I do feel remembering that I still have a choice is really important and empowering right now. I see us making the choice to connect and respond in compassion every time we share our joys and sorrows. Our sorrows are divided and our joys are amplified, and we know we're not alone. Projects that support us telling our stories of what we believe and what happened to us are relational and healing. And when we connect what we may be suffering with to others, we have the opportunity to unite. And uniting in the aspect of responding to our pain in open-hearted compassion for all who suffer is part of a virtuous cycle. You've all heard of a vicious cycle, right? That's not good. We don't like vicious cycles. But a virtuous cycle is the same thing, but it's something that's reinforcing things that are healthy and helpful. Being open-hearted to our pain calls us to have hardship without becoming hard, to have heartbreak without being broken, and be a reservoir of joy, an oasis of peace, and a pool of serenity that can ripple out to those around us. Wisdom from the 8th century Buddhist master Sandika asks the following powerful questions, and I find it reminds me of my agency. If something can be done about a situation, there's no need for dejection, right? I hear my Nike model, just do it. And if there's nothing that can be done about it, what is the use for being dejected? It invites an acceptance of what is and a living in this moment that is powerful, hard, and through that work, we can gain our joy, love, and life. And I'm not saying don't witness hard things, right? But that's still an act of doing, not just being dejected about it. Does that make sense? So pulling all that together, the Dalai Lama offers the choice to be kind and generous as the wise selfishness, because taking care of others, helping others is ultimately the way to discover our own joy and have a happy life. Exploring joy is nothing less than exploring what makes the human experience satisfying. He contrasted that with foolish selfishness, thinking only of ourselves, don't care about others, bully others, exploit others. And he reminds us of the inherent truth of our interdependence. One individual, no matter how powerful, how clever, cannot survive without other human beings. So the virtuous cycle rests on our choice and to use our attention to connect. We are all interdependent, and this transformational virtuous cycle is fueled by how we spend our attention, because what we pay attention to grows, and joy is our birthright. May we focus our attention and open our hearts. And in that spirit of open-heartedness and returning to the fun, let us rise in body or spirit. For hymn 311, let it be a dance. Oh, I hope it wasn't exhausting.
Well, this is the post-sermon time for you to talk back to us. That was such a complete service and sermon, nobody has anything to say. We need a couple of jokes.
Putting a U in your U.
Yes.
And with that, I'll flow into our closing words. Let us go forth with our calm and open hearts. Practice peace. Make possibility. Live with integrity, with the spirit of life within ourselves and all living things, and being fully present to each moment of this one wild, wonderful life.
We can now have the redundant extinguishing of the chalice since it chose on its own to extinguish. The words are in your service from Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create: a deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life.
Hey, Michael, before you start, would you mind if anyone sings along if they know the words?
What?
Would you mind if anyone sings along if they know the words?
Go ahead.
All right. I just want to make sure we had his permission, and I remove any barriers. Because if you feel so inspired to move, to sing, to have fun and joy, let's do it. Again, thank you all for playing with me and for proving my 7th grade teacher right. In music class, they made us learn that song, and we all told them we would never, ever sing it again. And they said, you never know.